YouTube, today I'm going to show you how I replace the DEF reservoir in these 25 and 3500 Chevrolet and GMC trucks. This is the quickest and most efficient way that I've found to do it. You may have another way and that's fine, but this is the way I do it. If you have a better way or any suggestions, please let me know. Here you can see the plastic tank shield is held on by 2 clips in the front and then 3 bolts on the inside of the frame rail. Here you can see the line going to the DEF injector. I always take that line loose first so that way you don't forget it. There's 2 little squares there. You mash the 2 tabs and pull it straight back and it will come off. Now remove the 3 tank shield bolts. Here's a quick little tip. If you go ahead and remove the sound deadening material from between the tank and the shield, then it will make removal of the shield a lot easier. Part of the trouble when removing these shields is the shield is right up against the running board bracket there. I found if you give it a quick, kind of bump with your hand to get it up past that a little bit, and then use like a 90-degree pick, then you can just kind of use the pick to get the hook undone after it's up. It drops right out. You want to repeat the same process for the rear hook. Next, you want to unhook the filler hose. There's just one squeeze clamp here. I choose not to siphon out the tank, just saves a little time, but you can if you have a small enough hose. What I'm using here is a pair of pliers that's designed specifically for these squeeze clamps. You can get it online from Amazon. Notice this hose clamp is now locked in the open position. It's just a small tab on the back that locks it that way. Next, I use a pry bar just to pry the rubber hose off the plastic tank inlet. At this time you need to support the tank with some type of jack. In this case I'm using a transmission jack. The 2 bolts that hold the straps to the body are T40 or Torx 40 bits. Some of the earlier ones had a 13mm bolt there. You want to take both of those straps loose. Next, repeat the process to remove the bolt from the rear strap. The straps both rest in a notch in the frame, so the rear of the strap or the inside of the strap has to move up and then toward the inside of the frame to get it out of that keyway there. Here's a little better view of the notch I was referring to. So you want to push the strap up, then I use my little hook, pry it toward the inside of the frame, and then come straight down with it. Now you want to lower the tank slowly, just down enough to maybe get your hands above the tank. There is a vent pipe, and you need to disconnect the wiring connector on top of the tank and ensure the DEF hose is free also. Here's the vent pipe I was referring to. There's a plastic notch or a tab. You will lift up on that and just pull it toward the front of the vehicle, and that disconnects that. Next is the wiring harness connector. It's a blue cam lock there on the connector. There's 2 tabs in the rear. You need to press in, one on each side, and then fold the blue cam lock up, and it's disconnected. Now slowly lower the tank the rest of the way down. Just be sure you're not pulling on any wires or hoses or nothing left hooked up. Just come on down with it. Now that the tank's down, it's time to replace the reservoir. There are probably 5 or 6 of these zip ties that hold this sound deadening cover on top of the pump. You want to snip those zip ties out. If there's any holding any wires, you snip those also. You can also disconnect the electrical connectors from the pump. Once the cover is off, just set it aside for a minute. You will be reusing that. Alright, next you're going to disconnect any remaining connectors. Also, I've disconnected the DEF line to the injector from the pump. After everything is disconnected off the pump, there are three stainless 4mm hex head Allen bolts holding the pump to the reservoir. You'll need an extended length 4mm bit, and you can discard those. The new reservoir kit comes with 3 new stainless bolts to put back in it. I try to keep the area on top of the pump as clean as possible. You don't want any dirt or debris falling in the tank when you get it opened up here. I block the 2 holes for the pump with my fingers and then just blow it off around that. At this point, there's 2 additional connectors you need to undo. One of them's for the tank heater and one of them's for this module over here. With those last 2 connectors undone, you can remove the reservoir lock ring from the tank. I'm using a dedicated tool here. I will put a link on Amazon for it. Or you could just use a hammer and a screwdriver. You can discard the lock ring too. One of those also comes in the reservoir kit. Again, keep your work area clean. Blow it off if it needs it again. You don't want any of that dirt or debris getting in that tank. Here I'm using a flat tip screwdriver to pry the top of the reservoir up. Next you want to remove the rubber seal. I'm definitely going to recommend that you wear gloves while messing with this DEF fluid. Some pretty nasty stuff. Don't want to get it all over you. Now the reservoir is held to the tank by a lock in the bottom. You need to press down and then turn the reservoir counterclockwise to get it to release. And then it's ready to come out. Let it drain for just a second and then go ahead and put it in a plastic bag or cardboard box or whatever you're going to dispose of it in. This stuff's pretty nasty. Here's the new reservoir kit. Now it comes with the reservoir and a new seal and all associated parts to get this done. Okay, time to drop the new reservoir in. Roughly remember where you took the old one out. You want to drop in, you'll feel it fall in the notch. You got to push down and then rotate clockwise to lock it in position. Next you need to put the seal on, go over the wires around the top of the reservoir, and then work the seal in between the reservoir and the tank. Here you can see the seal properly installed. You can also see the heating element in the bottom of this reservoir. It's that eye-shaped piece. Now it's time to put the top of the reservoir back in the tank. There is an arrow on top of the reservoir and a line in the tank itself. You want to line those up. Here you can see the arrow and the middle line. Those are the 2 marks you need to line up. Now you want to install the lock ring. Just put it on there and turn it clockwise, and then use the tool to get it about as tight as you can with your hands. Assemble the vent and install that. There are 2 seals for the pump. One of them is already in the reservoir, and the small one, get it out of the bag that come with the reservoir kit. Install it on the pump, push the pump down in place, and then install the 3 stainless screws into the pump. Okay, next you want to reconnect all the electrical connectors that you disconnected earlier. The 2 for the reservoir first. Then you want to put the insulator on top of the pump after you get the lines and the rest of the electrical connectors connected. So the new reservoir kit comes with these zip ties that clip on to the reservoir lock ring, and you just have to space them around in a way that keeps the sound insulator in position and holds the wires in position also. After that, we're ready to put the tank back up. Slowly start back up with the tank. When you get it up to the point where you can get your hands up above it and get the vent hose hooked back up and the electrical connector for the DEF tank. Once you get those two pieces put up, make sure that the DEF hose is routed over the tank and over the frame rail and at the injector. At that point you can jack it up the rest of the way in position and start to begin to install the tank straps. Remember that the inside of the strap is going to need to go up first and go into the notch, and then you can install the bolts in the strap. Remember to always start your bolts by hand. Again, these are Torx 40. They're stripped out pretty easy. Always start them by hand. Just tighten both the strap bolts and then you're ready to put the hose back on. Okay, so now we're going to put the hose back on. Remember that clamp is in a lock to open position. Sometimes it'll get your finger if you touch it. Just make sure the clamp stays on the hose and slide it over the inlet of the tank. So to get the clamp unlocked, I take a screwdriver and I wedge between the two ends and just pry it up. And sometimes, like in this case, the lock broke, but that's fine because the clamp is not damaged. Now when I take one of these squeeze clamps loose, I always like to put it back in the exact same spot that it was before. You can tell by looking at the hose where it was and just put it right back there. It helps prevent leaks. Alright, now that we're going to put the sound isolator back in the heat shield before we put it back up. Alright, so put it in there and then you kind of pop it with your hands to get it jump over the hooks that are right there behind the running board, and then all you have to do is put in the 3 remaining bolts on the inside of the frame rail. Once you reinstall the line to the DEF injector, you're done.